Play at Novibet.
Hello and a warm welcome to another edition of the Irish Angle in association with Novibet. As usual, Nagle, Johnny Ward here with me. Hi guys. Now we're going to go through last weekend, the big one, the Grand National. Did you back the winner, Emma?
I didn't. It kind of looks obvious now in hindsight, like the kind of young progressive grade 1 horse, Steam's clear, but I suppose that's the way the race has gone now. I think the first 4 home or grade 1 winners, like looking back to the 5th horse, Kitty's Life leading home, Ain't That a Shame, and Meeting of the Waters probably would be more like a Grand National of the old, but the race is changing, and yeah, I am Maximus. I wish I did back him now because, like I said, it looks obvious now, but in fairness to the horse, kind of the question marks around him jumping was the question. He jumped well overall. I think he made one kind of bad mistake, but I suppose the fences now, you can kind of just push through them, so he got away with it. And even coming into the elbow, like there was kind of a question, would he get there? Would he sprint it clear? And, you know, could be a Gold Cup horse for next season. Kind of looks like one who's on the up. But yeah, massive one for Willie Mullins and his trainer title hopes, and Paul Townend as well. And Jockey, I suppose we kind of always say he doesn't get the recognition, probably because he's not really in the media. He doesn't kind of make himself, he doesn't talk too much, I suppose, but he's done the Grand National, the Gold Cup and the Champion Hurdle all in 1 year. I can't imagine too many jockeys would have done that. And he took the brave man's route going down the inside with I Am Maximus. Many wouldn't probably go there, but he did it. And yeah, it was pretty clean sailing for him really the whole way around.
And what about this, Johnny, the Grand National? What did you make of it? They've made changes. We had no fallers. We had 21 finishers. Did you enjoy it? Do you think they've ruined it? Is it the best thing that's ever happened to horse racing? What's your opinion?
All of the above, yeah. Do you know it was very funny reading Patrick Mullins in his piece in the Irish Independent on Saturday. He didn't choose. He went for Meeting of the Waters, but he said in relation to I Am Maximus, I wouldn't have fancied him in a normal year, as his jumping is suspect. He's an awkward ride, and his best form is right-handed, even though he jumps left. Right. So I was reading that and I said, geez, Patrick doesn't seem to fancy him anyway, even though he could make a case for him. But the fact that I Am Maximus is winning this national, he's a horse by authorized, as was Tiger Roll. And funnily enough, the authorized story is a bit mad because he was ditched off to Turkey, but now he's coming back, and I think he's standing for 25 grand for the last batch of his national hunt horses, because there had been some horses that were doing well, like Tiger Roll, kind of I suppose as authorizes his own stock fell. But it's just it's a reflection of where the race is. Like, these horses wouldn't have a prayer in a normal national. Tiger Roll wouldn't, I wouldn't say would have completed, and I Am Maximus, with all those issues that Patrick referenced, for me it just shows the way the race is. And your blog, like I could nearly buy into both polarized opinions on the Grand National, because I wasn't happy that the fatalities number in the race was so high, but at the same time, the race now might as well be a hurdle race. I mean, like it was nearly half the field was in contention coming to the second last, and it was kind of being parroted as a good thing that nobody fell. I mean, but that's the whole point. Like, you can't have a 34 runner race run over 4.25 miles and say, oh, wasn't it great? Everyone got around. There wasn't a single faller. The reason there wasn't a faller is because the fences are like glorified hurdles. Now, that might be good in the sense that it still is the race that seems to stop a few nations and people watch it. And, you know, maybe it's people have changed over the years and we're afraid of the animal rights kind of lobby. But, like, I don't know, the National itself, for me, it's nowhere near the race it was. And as Chris Cook was writing in the Race and Post today, it's another very good article. The horses that apart from I Am Maximus who dominated were basically cross-country horses, and as was Tiger Roll, obviously. So read into that what you may, but the race itself, I mean, I Maximus produced an extraordinary turn of foot. But I was thinking, if you ran if you ran Galopin Des Champs in the race, how would he get on jumping them fences? I generally don't know, but it's not a race for jumping at all anymore. It's basically a glorified hurdle race. It's more American Grand National than Grand National now for me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to give you one thing here, just a little aside to it. I went yesterday and I met a cousin of mine who's over from Canada. Hadn't seen him in nearly 40 years. And he tells me on Saturday he'd been in Galway. He was visiting a niece of his who's in university in Galway. So he'd arranged to meet her in a pub in Galway. And he arrived into the pub about 3:00 and they were showing football. And he said to the guy behind the bar, he said he wanted to watch the Grand National. Would you be putting it on? He said, oh yeah. He says, we're stopping the football in a few minutes. Every screen will have the Grand National on it. We're looking forward to it. So that's great. So the next thing is his niece comes in. She'd no idea about horse racing, never been at one in her life, had never even seen a race that she could remember at least. So he was saying, oh, here, pick out a horse. So she picked out I Am Maximus, as beginner's luck happens it. So he gave her 20 quid, go into Boyle Sports next door, have a tenner each way on I Am Maximus. She watched the race. She had the best time she'd ever had in 7 minutes or 9 minutes, whatever it took to run it. Loved every bit of it and said, oh my God, I hadn't realized horse racing was so much fun. There you go. So that's a new person converted straight away, yes, on Saturday. That's what it's all about, is it not? That this is the shop window for us, for the whole industry. The one race that is probably, as you say, stopping nations. There's people stopping what they're doing to go and watch the Grand National. I know my local pub is jammed every year for it. All the people pack into it to watch it all, have a bet, have a bit of fun, a few drinks and everything else. It's all part of the whole thing. This is how we're going to start growing the crowd again, is it? By having a race that we can stand up and say, literally, as I said in my blog, there's nothing to see here. There is no problem with this, none whatsoever. If you want problems, have them somewhere else. Have them in the background in Tremor and Hexham or wherever. You can do whatever you like. You've still got a Midlands Grand National, which is a war of attrition, isn't it? So there's plenty of races in the calendar to whet the appetite of those race goers who want to see the blood and guts or whatever they want to see. It's there in whatever way, but at least the shop window version that we're putting out to the whole world doesn't have it anymore. I think that's fantastic news for the sport. What do you think, Emma? You're a young person. You weren't around in the days that we would have seen absolute carnage in some of those races. Even the Foyne one now was before my time, but you know what I mean. That this is a very different beast to what it used to be.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, I obviously don't remember you see the pictures of those massive fences and kind of black and white photos, and they're coming down a drop that's about 10 feet high. But even kind of since I started watching National, it has changed a lot. And to be honest, I can see both sides of the argument. Like some of the fences this year, like God, they were, like Donny said, kind of glorified hurdles. I think the first and the last in particular. I mean, there's really no chance of a horse falling over that. But I think you kind of have to look at it like, is there a place in the modern world for what we kind of knew as the Grand National? And there probably isn't. Like you said, it's kind of a race that the casuals watch, and it might get casuals into racing. If we saw a race like we had on Saturday every year, it's definitely not going to do the sport any harm. And it's probably the only way the Grand National can go forward, because if the fatality rates, if any fatality in the race is, it's massively bad publicity, it gets on the national news. And like we saw last year, my heart was in my mouth watching it, not because of I didn't think it was an overly dangerous race, but just because of the protest that went on before, and just like, what was this going to do to racing if a horse died, or bad falls or anything like that. I didn't have that feeling this year, just because I had seen a few photos of the fences, and you'd be hard pressed to say a horse is going to fall over them, and no fallers, well, apart from Cara Cramble, who fell at the second, but no jockey on board, which was kind of a strange one. I think overall, look, I enjoyed the race. I think the only thing that I maybe don't like about the changes is, it kind of takes away the chances of maybe that kind of miracle of the Grand National, an old horse there, kind of a hardened handicapper, maybe from a smaller yard at a massive price. It's probably not going to come out on top anymore, just because, like, the first four home this year, the all grade one winners over fences, and it's probably going to be the trend of the race going forward, you'd imagine. Because people won't be afraid to run these kind of young, not all young, Manila Endo and Galvin and Delport aren't young, but I Am Maximus, PDRs will probably target the Grand National with maybe a Gold Cup type of horse there, when they probably will come out on top, because there isn't as much drama on the way around, I suppose, which is a bit of a pity. It's not as much as a lottery as it was, but look, overall, I'd say the changes made are good, and I still enjoyed the race. Seeing I Am Maximus steaming home was still a thrill, but probably not the heart and mouth stuff as it was before.
Yeah, when you look at the rest of it, the race goers who are on about this as well, generally fans of the sport are the ones saying they don't like the changes particularly. But you look at the other 1,500 races they watch during the year, some absolute dross, isn't it? Like you're looking at there, what are we? Wolverhampton last week on about a 2-runner race, an 11-runner race turned into a 2-runner race because of a false start. Like, you look at some of the stuff, Johnny, you see around the country. You go to some of our gaff tracks as well, and you see some very poor horses running in poor races, and yet we enjoy it as a sport. It's still a spectacle to whatever level. So surely this is somewhere upgraded from that. You've got still 21 horses coming down to a last fence and so on, with what, a dozen or more in contention. Is that not what you want to see in racing?
Yeah, I see. I don't know the Grand National. I was never a massive fan of the race, but I did. Again, it was what Chris Cook was saying today. It was that utter bewilderment as to what was going on. There were so much 40 horses, and like it was a genuine thrill if the horse that you backed could just get from one fence to the other, and it was like kind of this rush or this gradual rise of expectation as the race went on. Oh my God, he's still there! He's still there! He's still there! The favourite's gone. The second favourite's gone. Where's the third favourite? Where's Tony McCoy? Yada yada. But that's all gone now. It's just a race that basically is run over kind of nice looking fences that are ultimately kind of dead Christmas trees atop of hurdles, really, and that's grand. And maybe the person that you're on about, Vinny, like, really enjoyed that experience. And in fairness, if you had backed the guts of 15, 20 horses in the race, you probably got a little bit of a thrill, up until nearly the third last, and that's grand. But my issue is that racing in Britain has become so petrified by the animal rights people, who, in my view, you will never actually satisfy. And I am completely with the animal rights people with regard to their general belief systems and all of that, and arguing that people should go vegan and all of that. There's a lot to be said for all of that, but racing itself is so petrified by them. The Grand National itself has become a glorified hurdle race, and I'm not sure how I feel about that, to be honest.
You'd wonder, is the argument there, like, should they just run it over standard chase fences now, rather than, the birch thrown on top of a little hurdle? Probably would be more of a test.
Probably, Emma. Like, there's literally no chance like Tiger Roll would have won. Tiger Roll was no good around, like running around conventional fences. He was no good. It's become a race for horses who are kind of almost suspect jumpers in some respects, and that would be interesting because, like, as I say, I don't know how Galloping Deschamps would get on that race because it's not a chase.
Yeah, there could be a case for saying you might start to see Grand National or Gold Cup winners automatically going on as their next start to be the Grand National, if that's the case, which mightn't be a bad thing, I suppose. Anyway, look, we'll move on to other elements of it. Willie Mullins wins it. Sure, he's winning everything, isn't he? And of course, the 500 grand he picked up for winning it puts him marginally ahead in the UK Trainers Championship, and he's now going to start focusing on that and try and win that over the next few weeks as he's runners in Cheltenham this week as well. He's going to have a load of them in Ayr for the Scottish Champion Hurdle, Scottish Grand National. What about this? We know he's probably going to win it, but the one little thing for me is the fact you hear trainers constantly on about this. Oh no, where I'm going to run my horse, so it's whatever's best for the horse and what the owners and all this want and everything else. But here's a man, he's just running his horses wherever he wants, isn't he? It's nothing to do with the horse at all, is it? Because they should have been going to Punchestown. They were all geared up for that. That was the plan all along. All of a sudden, it's a switch of plan. Now they're going to Ayr and Cheltenham and wherever else during the month of May. And what do you make of that, Johnny?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've had a horse with Willie Mullins, and unfortunately it didn't work out. And I couldn't say enough for the way, and it was only a short run thing. I couldn't say enough for the way I was treated. But I think it's well understood that if you have a horse of Willie Mullins, you are in the company of greatness here. And a lot of owners will just obviously they'll discuss it with Willie, but Willie will ultimately have the final say much of the time, and that's part of the package. I think with Willie, he has to kind of I suppose look after his own training operation as well, and he has the riches that he can have 17 horses entered in the Ballymore or whatever the week before, and he can spread them out. And as an owner, I think you have to reflect and respect that. And obviously, there's such goodwill towards them that they're happy to be part. These owners are happy to play their part in what would be a historic British first title. And I just kind of get that. I think. I mean, if you're an owner, you should be deciding where your horse is running because you're paying the bills. But I think with Willie, once you kind of realize that Willie is such a, I don't know, he's such a dominant sort of force in racing, that you kind of accept that package. I think it's a little bit different to having a horse trained anywhere else. But ultimately, there's a lot of goodwill towards them from owners, and they'll want to play their part in this success. Yeah,
and it will be a success, Emma, will it?
Yeah, I think if I had a horse with Willie, I'd love to be part of this, to be honest. I'd love to be the one getting if you won the Scottish Grand National and was my horse, you have massive pride. Like, I think to like, it would be a legendary achievement to do it. Kind of said last week, I don't think he set out the start of the season to do it because he would have had a lot more horses in England if he had. But he's marginally ahead. I saw he has a couple of mares in a juvenile fillies handicap at Cheltenham. I think it's worth about 22 grand to the winner. So a load of them in air, a few of them in Sandown. You'd be kind of wondering when he sent a few of the Grade 1 horses to Sandown now as well, to kind of solidify his challenge. Look, I think if he goes for it hard, he'll probably do it because, as we kind of seen in Aintree, the UK can't seem to live with our Grade 1 horses. And even with these kind of second string Grade 1 horses, we're mopping up the Grade 1s in Aintree. So I'd say, look, if he throws his whole hand out there, he'll do it. But that will actually affect Paul Townend as well. You'd imagine, like, he needs to be champion jockey, because if Willie sends some of these Grade 1 chasers, even handicappers, who would be, racking up the numbers in Punchestown for Paul, it's going to give Jack Kennedy a real chance of being champion jockey. You'd have to imagine, like, will Paul go to Sandown to ride these horses? Will he stay in Punchestown? Even then, there won't be the same ammunition if he's sending some of his top ones over to the UK. So it's going to make for a really interesting jockey's title challenge, as well as the UK trainers title.
Yeah, that'll be one to savour now coming into Punchestown. I think it'd be nice to see them both stay injury free between now and the end of the season to see how it pans out. Okay, going to change to a different subject now. There was a Sunday Independent article. It was talking about the recent death of Kilbeggan racecourse manager Paddy Dunnigan. And now, obviously, we know he committed suicide, and it's very sad for him, his family, his friends, and everything else, as we discussed last week. But the Independent has taken a very funny stance on this. They've gone and they're trying to link his suicide to ongoing problems he was having with the regulators of the sport, the IHRB. And there's an inference here that the IHRB is in some way responsible for what happened to him. And I think this is outrageous. Look, the regulators have to do their job. That's it. It's someone commits suicide. That's a completely different thing. That's to do with mental health issues and whatever was going on, and depression and all the rest. And it's anything can be a trigger for that, I would imagine. I don't know for a fact, because I've never been involved in it. I've never, fortunately, had anyone close to me who committed suicide. But the bottom line here is, Johnny, they've taken a very funny stance here. I'm really not sure where they're coming from or what they're trying to achieve by doing this, because I can't see any proper link between the two. What do you make of it?
Yeah, like, I don't know Maeve Sheehan personally, and with regard to the Sunday Independent, for which I used to write back in the days, I feel the paper has improved a lot in recent years. It was really a bit of a rag. It was a horrible sort of anti-Republican paper, real agendas all over the place. And I feel the new owners have changed that. They've gotten rid of a lot of the crap that was in the paper. And Maeve Sheehan has been responsible for some very good journalism, actually, and much of it around racing. I thought this piece was utterly disgraceful, to be quite honest, because, as you say, the inference in the sense of what happened to Paddy, and there may be a large element of general truth to what Maeve wrote here, but the inference that, it was down to work pressures, and maybe it was, is so dangerous, because it's the one rule in terms of speaking the truth in journalism that's broken is how you report on suicides. And, you would see, when they stopped reporting on suicides as a bald fact in the rail lines in Britain, where they kind of use euphemisms to describe an incident and all of that. And this has been statistically proven that copycat jumps in front of trains went down markedly, because when you report on a suicide, you can be sure that there are a lot of vulnerable people out there who will be affected by it, and who may end up taking their own lives as well. So you have to be very, very careful about how you report suicide. And it's the one instance in journalism where you kind of break the law in terms of telling what happened actually in some instances, and there's good reason behind that. But furthermore to that, I was really devastated when I heard the news of Paddy last weekend on Saturday. But we all have our own sort of wonders about an incident like this, why it might have happened. And Maeve, for me here, she referenced people in the piece that if I were them and I was reading this, I would be really I felt it was despicable, actually, to be honest, because we can only kind of we can only come to some conclusions as to what was going on in Paddy's head as he decided that he was going to end his life that evening. But to name people in this piece and provide sort of an inference and a kind of a nexus between the pressure he was under from the IHRB and what happened, I thought was really poor. And the last thing I'll say on this was, as much as I spoke very nicely about Paddy sort of last week, and I put up a message on Instagram that was heartfelt, speak to people in the game, he was not easy to deal with from a racing perspective. And I thought this piece was totally out of order.
I agree. Getting involved in a blame game here on something as serious and as tragic as this, I think is absolutely scandalous. Look, we'll move on. Loads of good racing, as we said this week. We've got the Craven meeting in Newmarket, where Aidan O'Brien will have a few sent over for that, no doubt. I don't think there's too many Irish going to it, to be honest with you. Then we've got a 2-day in Cheltenham where there's loads of horses going there. Lots of old favourites running as well. And we've got the Scottish stuff at the weekend. So lots to look forward to. Emma, anything in particular you're looking forward to this week?
Sure. Look, I suppose the Craven meeting is always kind of an exciting one. I think Aidan O'Brien has 3 or 4 or 5 maybe entered in there. Kind of one he gave a little bit of favourable mention to when we were there for the stable tour about a month ago now was Gaspar de Lemos. I think he's in the Fielding Stakes on the Wednesday. A Justify horse, so probably one to watch out for. He's got a couple in the Craven as well, but look, I suppose all eyes on Ayr at the weekend. Willie has, I think, 5 in the Scottish Champion Hurdle and 10 in the Grand National. Few of them ran in Aintree over the week, right? So how many he'll send, I'm not sure, but yeah, it'll be kind of counting down the numbers for his title charge, I suppose. Kind of looking forward to that.
Now, the weather is due to improve a little bit as well. What about that, Johnny? We might see less cancellations anyway. Hopefully all those meetings in the UK go ahead, but we've already had a few cancelled this week already, up as far as Saturday, I think, for Limerick. It's been that for months, hasn't it, Johnny? So hopefully it's going to turn a corner, is it?
Yeah, like, so Paddy Graffin, obviously, he called off Goran, was it, yesterday or today or whatever, in terms of their meeting. And like these, when rescheduled meetings are called off as well, Vinny, it's a heavy loss for the racetrack, because you get one shot at it within a 4-week period, I think. Now, I mean, I think there was some reaction to the Limerick sort of student day going ahead, because Limerick called off a meeting over a week in advance subsequently. And I mean, Limerick has undergone an awful lot of rain. So you can sort of draw your own conclusions there maybe about what was going on in terms of running on ground that was that bad. But this predicted sort of week of good weather is desperately needed, and we've had a lot of sort of sporting events called off and a lot of training called off over the last few months. But like, ultimately, in terms of people being able to feed themselves in the Irish farming industry, if we don't get a spell of dry weather soon, there's going to be mass crop failure and all of that. So it's been felt across all these sectors. And you see Charlie McConlogue has given £100 per hectare for those who can get their tillage planted this season and this year, and that's explicable. But on a racing front, like, Vinny, badly needed. And to be honest, the biggest kick I got out of the whole Aintree experience was the fact that the ground had dried up so markedly that it was actually run on proper sort of Grand National ground. It had dried out from a situation that I was worried it was going to go ahead this time last week to sort of nearly good to soft ground. And that just shows a good bit of weather can still make a big difference. But I have massive sympathy for racecourse managers. They've been dealing with months and months and months of rain. It's a big loss to the racecourse when they can't reschedule, and we desperately need this. We saw Dundalk stage in a meeting Friday and Saturday. I envisage that might happen more, but we desperately need this good spell of weather.
Yeah, it is incredible how quick it does dry out, isn't it? So like, it's not all is not lost here. Whatever about for the farmers with some of their crops that needed to be planted, but certainly from a racing point of view, you'd imagine a week of good weather here and we're back to good ground. I'd have to start watering again probably. What about it, Emma?
Yeah, we actually have a horse going for a point to point, and we were saying, I think there's a meeting in Drummahan on Sunday and another meeting the following Sunday, and we were saying, I better get him out this Sunday in case it dries up too much, which last week you might have been mad saying the ground would be too dry turning a point to point, but it's kind of, the way it is. Like, I'm sitting here in front of a window and the sun is shining in my eyes, I can barely see, and then in 5 minutes time it could be lashing rain. The weather is just insane. Like Johnny was saying, I saw an article there on the site earlier that Clonmel are having their first fixture in over, I think, 2 months since Clonmel have been able to run with all the cancellations. So yeah, it's been a really tough time for race courses getting the meetings on. But hopefully we'll see it picking up in the next few weeks.
On that as well, Vinny, Clonmel is in, like, Clonmel is Irish for, I think, is it the meadow of honey or something like that, and basically that part of the world, as you know, it's well known for its good land. And like, I was actually staggered to see the money that John Magna reputedly paid for some land recently, 38 grand an acre. I mean, if that's going to be used for tillage or whatever it's going to be used for, like, this is extraordinary money, given that tillage farming is in absolute crisis in Ireland. Now, you can talk all day about the kind of buying up of land by sort of Magna and Tipperary and how that's gone down on the ground. But I was astonished by this, because I don't know if he's been watching the weather for the last 12 months, but I have.
I'd say his weather is something different to our weather now, to be honest with you. But there you go. Anyway, we'll move on to a horse to follow. I'll give you one first. Nothing major here. I'm going to go with, I know the way you're thinking. Won the Kim Muir, won the Mile May Chase in Aintree. Gavin Cromwell, I think he's a very good novice chaser. He could bring up the hat trick, could he, in Punchestown potentially? But of course, he's JP owned. JP has some amount of novice chasers, Emma. He could keep going, could he, all through the season?
It's probably the best bit of placing of all time to get him into Kim Muir 145 in Cheltenham. But JP's novice chase is unreal. I'm going to give one as well, Corpus Cross. I think I've probably given him plenty already, but I just thought his run behind Jerry Plum was so big in the Aintree Bowl. Really brave move by Emmet to put him in there. Like, he could have gone for one of the novice chases. And he didn't jump fluidly. He was held up in behind. He wasn't as fluent as he was at Cheltenham, but still he kind of came there travelling. And, you know, you can probably make the argument that Jerry Clum might be at his best Aintree, and considering last year's performance as well. He's rated 170. Corpus Cross had £13 to find on him coming into it on official ratings. I think, you know, maybe talking about the Grand National, maybe he could be one for next year. Like you said, maybe question marks about his jumping, but he should be able to jump around those Aintree fences. So that might be a long-term prediction there, Corpus Cross, for next year's Grand National.
Yeah, that was one horse in this year's Grand National, was Noble Yates of Emmett Mullins. Geez, he didn't travel a yard, did he? I'd fancied him. My God, he just never, ever wanted to be involved, whatever the story was. Anyway, Johnny, have you one for us to follow?
Yeah, I think in fairness to Noble Yates, I suppose he's had a tough enough campaign, and maybe it was just one too many, but like Emma's kind of alluding to it there, you're nearly thinking, what is Paul Byrne thinking now in terms of what horse can I get to run in this race worth £1 million in a year's time? That'll be suited to the test, because I don't know, like, you can have any manner of jumper really running in it now. Try to get him or her in off a good weight. Now, you can't predict the ground necessarily, but there's still a lot of money to be won. I'm going to be a bit boring here, to be honest, but I'm going to actually go with, I know the way you're thinking as well, Vinny. I mean, it's funny, like, if you were backing this horse all year, and then you didn't back him at Cheltenham, or you didn't back him at Aintree, you'd be like, how is this horse gone from sort of a decent handicapper to a possible Gold Cup contender? But his improvement has been dramatic anyway, and a lot of people gave Derek O'Connor a lot of credit for his ride at Cheltenham. Maybe that was due, but geez, the horse was just obviously clearly completely thrown in, and like, his jumping is still a little bit careful at times. But that turn of foot he has, I've said this before, if you're a walk in the park horse who stays, you have that turn of foot. It can be a real potent kind of a mixture, and he seems to have both. And like, the way he put the race to bed after going whatever it was, like, he looked like he was in trouble. He's an extraordinary horse, really, and Gavin has done some job with him, and I'd be fascinated to see what he could do at Punchestown. I'd nearly be tempted to run him against the senior horses altogether to see where he's at, but anyway, one way or the other, I'm with you on this one. I think his story has yet to be told.
Yeah, I don't think they'll run him against senior horse. I think they know what they've got already. Something very, very, very good. Anyway, look, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back again next week, same time, more or less, next Monday, and we'll have all the news about the Scottish Grand National and Willie's challenge for the title in the UK. Thanks for watching. Do gamble responsibly, and make sure to subscribe to our channel. Bye for now.